Well, good afternoon and welcome to my garden. It's a beautiful day in early spring. The sun's shining, there's a nice temperature, and it's just a joy to be outside to see all the buds swelling in the trees, the growth beginning to happen, and to see some of the early things like hellebores and magnolias and the little grey hyacinths and ericas and other plants that we have breaking into flower now, showing off some of that very welcome early spring colour. But the reason I wanted to mention today is to take you and show you a magnolia that I pruned less than a year ago. You see, one of the viewers here on our channel wrote in and asked if we could show them how to prune a magnolia. And it just so happened that our plant here was getting a little large for its position, but more importantly, it was tending to flower mostly towards the top half of the plant, so it needed some renewal pruning, some ways to reduce the size and encourage some young flowering wood to be generated around the base of the plant. Normally magnolias don't need a whole lot of pruning, but in this case the two things came together, so I took two and then started to prune it, and in this video I'll show you how I went about pruning it, but also today to show you how the plant has turned out. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm really quite pleased as to how it turned out. It's one of the DeVos hybrids that they raised and introduced at the National Arboretum really quite a few years ago now. This is what they affectionately know as one of the girls, a series that was named Betty and Jane, and there's another very nice one known as Susan too. The thing that we like about these is that they generally flower a few weeks later than some of the early flowering magnolias, and therefore under most circumstances here in our region they miss the worst of the spring killing frost that will go in and catch the flower buds, and then of course they don't open, they turn brown colors. But as you see, this one is really doing very well and now has lots of flowers on it, just under a year of when I started in to prune it. So that if you have a magnolia like this in your garden, just watch on to the rest of this video and I'll take you through the stages that I used in pruning this plant just under a year ago. And now, as we move into the middle of May, as you see, the plant has virtually finished flowering. There's just one or two flowers on the tops of it. It's starting to make a little bit of growth. So now is the time to go in and do our pruning. And here's what we're going to need tools-wise. A set of long-handled pruners. This will enable me to get up near the top to be able to reach into the plant. Obviously, a pair of secateurs that I nearly forgot was in my hip pocket, or pruners as they call them here in this country. And then for heavier shoots, long handled loppers like these are really good. And then to take out some of the older woodier branches at the bottom, a saw, and of course also a tarpaulin or some sort of way that you're going to be able to collect up the trimmings. Now, the overall objective is of course to reduce the height of the plant by about, say, a third, so that we're able to see the flowers closer to the ground. Also, I'd like to try and condense the shape of it a little bit because it is kind of billowing out over the side of my path here and also coming out onto the lawn. But also, rather than just chopping stuff off the top that many people would think about doing, it's important to try to get it to regenerate some growth again from the base, so that if you remember how it was carrying all its flowers on the top of the plant, what we want to try and do is to simulate some young growth again from the base here that's going to fill out and make overall a shapely plant that's going to carry flowers down here in the lower half of the plant rather than all up at the top. And if you remember, if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that the first thing I do is to remove the 3Ds, the dead, damaged and diseased wood. Now fortunately there isn't much disease in this, in fact I don't see any. There isn't really much damage, but there are some crossing branches, so I'm going to take those out first. And where you have branches like this that are rubbing and crossing, obviously that is not a good thing. And as you see, there are two crossing here. There's this one which is growing from the center out in this direction, which is very good. And then there's this nice shoot here that's growing up towards the middle and to the inside of it. And if you look here, you'll see where the two branches are rubbing together. And that's where we obviously have to remedy that. So I'm going to shorten this one back beneath there to try and encourage some growth to come out in this direction, where the plant's a little bit on the thin side anyway. So with my loppers, I'm going to take this one off here. There's a kind of area here where there were a couple of buds where it's likely to sprout again, and I'm going to take it off at this point, and that should allow it now to grow out in this direction. And then it might be a little difficult for you to see, but if you look in here, you'll see that the same thing is going on just here, where two branches are rubbing together. And in fact, now that I look at it, because this is twisting around this stem back and forward here, I'm going to take it right back where my finger is here. You'll see that there's the remains of another bud down here. That's where I'm going to take it back. So again, just going in and taking out any of the crossing branches. If you look here, you'll see this is the stem we talked about, and down here where my finger is, there's a couple of buds there, and I'm going to use again the long handle pruners to be able to get in there and snip that one out. Now sometimes if the likes of this one is twisted around, you might have to cut it in a couple of places to be able to extract it, to be able to pull it out. And once you do, as you see, you get a good big branch out there, and that should cut out and stop that crossing that's going on there, and also then encourage some of the new growth that I want to come from the base of the plant. Now, as I mentioned earlier, magnolias normally don't need a lot of pruning, and this plant certainly has not had much pruning done over the years. So there are some branches that are kind of misdirected and so on, but I'm going to let those stay. But after you take out the 3Ds, the dead, damaged, diseased wood, any dead snags that are in there left over from ones that you might have been pruning before, and also the crossing branches that we just removed, then it's time to think about how we can shorten down the top of the plant. And that's where these long handle pruners are very handy, because then it's really just a matter of reaching into the plant and then selecting the branches that you want to shorten, and then just take them out with the long handle pruner. Now it's a little difficult to show you because we're working up near the top of the plant, but if you look at this shoot here, you'll see that I've now hooked the pruner around it. I'm going down to where there's a bud branching out, and then just pulling on the rope means that you're able to take the growth out. And the trick, of course, is to try to get in and prune it back so that you can shorten it, but at the same time leave it so that it doesn't look like it's really chopped off and ugly looking at the top. So you're looking to try and create a shorter plant, but one that's also shapely and doesn't look like it's been really hard pruned back. Now, it takes a little bit of patience and a little bit of finesse too, I suppose, to be able to pick the branches correctly. But as you see, by just working your way around the plant, you can really start to get a nice shapely habit going. You're able to leave it so that the plant is going to be able to grow out, and particularly when I get around this side, I see now that there's some branches here that I can shorten back to. So as you see, I'm really just working my way around the plant, shortening back the shoots here at the top, looking to get a general kind of dome cone-shaped plant back into the shape of the plant, and overall looking to see if I can encourage some young fresh growth that's going to grow out, set flower buds during the summertime, and then give me a much nicer, more shapely plant. And now, as I hope you can see, I have shortened off all of the growth here around what I call the shoulder of the plant. I've thinned out the top of it, and now it's only a matter of going in and just taking out the leading tips that are there, just to shorten those back a little bit as well. So now that I've done the hard work of shortening down and thinning out the top and kept a general cone shape, as you see, kind of a fat cone shape to the plant, which is the natural shape of this magnolia, now it's a matter of going in and shortening down what I call the real shoulders of the plant and reducing that to keep the overall shape of the plant going on. So that will thin things out and open them up considerably. There's a little one here I'm going to take, and this one here I'm going to shorten back like that. And then this one is kind of spreading out and coming in this direction. So this is one that I'm going to take off here, and then shorten this one back to this joint, and that comes out. And as you see now, we're gradually thinning down and shortening back the growth of all of these shoots, so that we're getting back to really producing a plant that is more shapely and will be much more growthy. Now, it's not absolutely critical, but when I'm pruning a shoot, I'll usually take it off at, say, a leaf joint or another place somewhere on the stem where there's a little bit more lignified tissue. Like for instance here on this one, I'd probably take it off at about that point there. But since this shoot is growing back into the middle of the plant, what I'm going to do is to take this off flush at this branch here, so that then there's a good opportunity for the callus here to grow over quickly and make a very speedy healing cut. And here, as you see, is a branch that's growing out and it's crossing over with this one. So in which case, I'm going to shorten it right back to this joint here. And that means that now the growths are going to come from further back in the stems, and there's a few little bits of dead stuff here that comes out. You can see sometimes some of the dead growth appears when you get in and get beyond the outer foliage. Again, here's one that's kind of growing out and crossing over here, so this one I'm going to take out there. Cutting back just, if you look here, you'll see that I'm just cutting this back to a joint in the branch, and that means that now this has got open air and plenty of room to grow out, and these will grow out, set flower bud, and then flower next spring. Now, our neighbour's dog is still not very happy with me, but I wonder if you can see this branch here. See how it's spreading out from this joint and then going back into the middle of the plant and spreading off out in that direction. I want to take this one off at this junction. So if you just bear with me a minute, I'll get a little closer and come in from the back and show you how I'm going to take it out with the saw. And as you probably noticed in other videos that I've done, it's good to keep the center of the plants open so that you're able to have growth that spreads out from the center of the plant. Now, I'm using my saw here on this one, and when you're cutting off branches, the first thing to do is to come in from underneath and make a saw cut, because then with the weight of the branch that's down on it, that might peel off. So make a downward cut, or make an upward cut rather, from the bottom of the plant, and then once you've got that done, you can then start to get in and then just saw out the branch. And there it is. And now, as you see, when we take this branch out, it opens up the center of the plant so that now we've got nice open airy center to the plant that will allow sunlight and air to get into the middle of the plant so that it can continue to grow up and then fill out this general area. So now, as I hope you can see by the pile of prunings here, that we've reduced the overall size and shape of the plant by about a third. We've certainly reduced the height, we've thinned out the shoulders. I've tried to keep what I consider to be the natural shape of this type of magnolia, which is a general kind of conical dome-shaped plant. We've opened up the center of it so that we should get some regeneration of young growth that will come from the base. I will probably do this over a 3-year period, taking out some of the older branches next year and then again the following year, and that will, over a 3-year period, build plenty of young fresh growth. Meanwhile, all of these pruning cuts here will now heal. They'll produce young fresh growth that will grow out this summer, set flower buds, and then flower next spring. So in summary, if you need to prune a magnolia, normally you don't, but if you do want to reduce the size of it and need to prune it, you do it first of all when they finish flowering. That leaves the longest possible time for the young growth to regrow and set flower buds for the next year. Take out the 3Ds, the dead, damaged and diseased wood, any crossing branches, and then look at the overall shape of the plant and reduce that in hopefully what you agree to be a natural shape for a magnolia. So rather than just cutting off the top, as many people would probably do, you'll see that I've taken a little bit more time and thinned it out and generally got it to be what I consider at least to be a natural shape. So that's what is all about and how you can prune your magnolias if you need to. This is David Wilson. Enjoy your gardening. It's good for us and it's very good for our environment too.